Hello, Marvelites. Welcome to another all-new episode of the MCU Exchange podcast. This is episode 12. My name is Aaron. I'll be your host for this episode. Alongside me is Charles
What's up?
and Joe.
Hey!
Today's a very special episode because we're going to talk about only one topic on the exchange. But before that, you can give us a follow on our social media accounts. That's facebook.com/the MCU Exchange. You can also follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/MCU Exchange. You can join our MCU quarantine polls. Please do join us. We post polls every other day, and you can also follow us on YouTube. That's MCU Exchange. Also, I was going to give a shout out to all our listeners over at Spotify, YouTube, Anchor, Google Podcasts, and Breaker. So let's get right to it in a very special episode of the MCU Exchange podcast. Our topic for today is the ongoing debate. What's the worst movie? Is it Iron Man 3 or Thor: The Dark World? All right. First up, Iron Man 3, the first Phase 2 movie after the Avengers. So, is this a good movie or a great movie or somewhat worse movie? Charles, what do you think? What is your initial thoughts about Iron Man 3?
Dude, Iron Man 3 is a fucking great movie. Like, I get the hate. I can't blame people for hating that twist because I distinctly remember having my jaw drop seeing that twist happen. And I remember being so conflicted at the end, you know, because the trailers leading up to to Iron Man 3 were very cool, Everyone thought, oh shit, Iron Mandarin has the rings. Is it gonna be like Chitauri Tech? Are the rings gonna be like Chitauri Tech? Are they gonna fucking fire lasers like they do in the comics?
Yeah.
Is he gonna be like, is he gonna have everything we know from him in the comics? And of course, we don't necessarily see them in the final cut of the movie. Ben Kingsley turns out to be this fucking idiot. But the months that followed after I first watched it, I sort of changed my tune on it. I started disliking it, and just thinking, oh fuck, I can't believe they fucking ruined this iconic Iron Man villain. But then slowly, as I like sort of reflected on Shane Black's body of work, because I'm such a huge Shane Black fan, his movie with Robert Downey Jr. before Iron Man 3, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, is absolutely one of the
Oh,
best
yeah.
crime films like the modern period. One of the best body comedies, and obviously the nice guys, Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. It shows how much Shane Black is good with this kind of tone, this kind of thriller, body comedy, crime, conspiracy tone, and it's such a, he Iron Man 3 sort of takes it to the next level because he sort of applies it to a superhero movie and not just like an average, basic live action movie. Like there's actual, there's a spectacle to it, there's a world to it, and for the most part, it's a fucking amazing movie. And I can't believe people think Thor: The Dark World is better than it.
Joe, when you first saw the movie, like back in 2013, what is your initial reaction? What are your initial thoughts about it?
So here's a little history from me. Shortly before Iron Man 3 came out, I managed to break my kneecap, so I was kind of stuck in a wheelchair for a little while and I really wanted to watch the film, but not every cinema is very accommodating for this. In Austria, and I was lucky enough to go to the cinema, and I was like, I was absolutely hyped because Avengers had me hyped. I was in a bad place because you can't really move, and so it was like I was completely in it. The only sad thing is a random Reddit commentary spoiled the twist for me. So I
Oh,
went in knowing the twist.
Oh,
That really hurt. It really hurt, but I was still like really hyped about it because that was I love the MCU films, and it's always something I always get excited for when they come out. But it was weird because on some way I thought they're not going to do that. That sounds ridiculous. That can't be true. But on the other side, at the same time, I thought that's kind of creative. It's very different because I don't have a big history with Iron Man until 2008 when the movie came out. My history with Marvel was mostly like Spider-Man focused. And I was really surprised when the film, it all came together really well for me. There's still some scenes that I find a little off, like the flame throwing scene where he just randomly spits fire and never talked about again.
yeah,
yeah.
thoroughly.
But
That's a road.
I yeah, it's just even though somehow I love how the film does a lot that I think gets really underappreciated. I really like the film. It grew on me more and more over time because I like how Shane Black kind of twists the conventions in a way that what we expect. I
Yeah.
liked his usage of propaganda through the Mandarin, how effective that is. Ironically, how important that as a topic is today, if you think about it.
Mhm.
And it also, like, the thing for me is what I think I really started to appreciate is that everyone was complaining, how can you top Avengers? And I think they did it in a very good style by making a very personal story about Iron Man, about Tony Stark, and bringing him to a human level we haven't seen yet in these films. Because we're so used to superheroes being super, doing the right thing, saving people, et cetera, et cetera. But we never thought about, like, Tony Stark is still the only villains he fought were guys that were similar to him that had suits and that attacked him in suits. He
Yep.
had to
Yeah.
carry a nuke and was ready to pretty much sacrifice himself, but somehow survived. And he has to live with that. And the film
Yep.
does not shy away from what that is.
For me, Iron Man 3 is like it's a very special movie to me because I first became a fan of the MCU during the Avengers, so I had to catch up of the other movies, and then Iron Man 3 is the second movie that I went to see on the big screen, and I had that expectation, that maybe some of the Avengers might show up, because interconnectivity, connections being revealed, and I was happy to see that movie because my first time, bring my brother along, and I was there, like seeing Tony Stark taking a step back, like being human, like his
Yes.
back's against the wall, and and you see him being that resourceful, in that
Yeah.
hardware store, and then he goes to attack to discover the Mandarin twist, and
Yeah.
I love it. And then one of the scenes that I love was that scene where he saves the people in the air and the
Oh
airplane
yeah.
exploded. I love that scene.
Mm.
And I was hooked to that scene. Like I want to watch that again. And then it's like the first time seeing an MCU movie that during the premiere weekend, like every cinema is sold out here in the city. Like it's crazy, And
Mm.
I believe it's a 1 billion movie, right? 1.2 billion.
I
The
think it was the
charisma,
first solo film to do it too.
yeah, the first solo film to do it, and it's like the first solo film that Saturday Avengers introduced to the world. Like they're not aware that oh my god, these things are connected, so we have to watch this, and
Yeah.
and seeing the character of Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. being that amazing all the time when he's on screen as Tony Stark, and that charisma that when he's in the screen, it's really something else. And
Mm.
I love Iron Man 3. It's a great movie for me.
Speaking of scenes that we like, probably one of my favorite scenes in just like in general are those Mandarin commercials. They're like one of the
Oh yeah.
best to come
Oh yeah.
out of the MCU. Just seeing how they're sort of like what do you call this? Like a scissor reel of like terrorist acts of the
Mm.
Mandarin sort of practice shooting in whatever quote unquote desert he was pretending he was like in Afghanistan or Iraq, and you just felt him narrating the story of the Braves, the Cheyenne Braves, and the massacre that occurred when all the white people went and fucking slayed them. It's such a great story. It's such a great anecdote, and when he goes and pretends to, well, at least for Trevor, he pretends to murder that politician in front of live TV. He thought it was a fake gun. He didn't know it was real. Those kinds of things are like such great touches to how they sold the Mandarin to be like a big, political threat. And like Joe said, that kind of thing is very, it's very topical, especially during this time of turmoil in our world. Like are the bad guys we're seeing on TV, the politicians, are they just puppets for someone else? Like it makes you
Mm.
wonder how the
Yeah.
world really operates, and Iron Man 3 really shined a light on that kind of notion for me.
Charles, that was exactly the same point I wanted to make. It's the same for
Really.
me, and we have to also say what a range we get from one character through this film. Just Ben Kingsley giving us this extremely chilling version of the Mandarin, but at the same time this really kooky, out there, character with Trevor, and you gotta commend. They found a perfect actor where you don't think he's going to do that. Like everything in the advertising sells that they got an actor who has range, who's known for playing villains, who's known for being a very deep, very dangerous character in film, and then just pull the rug from under your feet. And I really think it's like, I understand a lot of people are upset that it's not comic accurate. I can understand. I think the Mandarin is a very interesting but also a very difficult character to transition, which I'm really curious what they're going to do with Shang-Chi, which is just fantastic that he's going to be in that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, though, you gotta say those commercials, those little ads added so much pressure without it being real. Like the realization that you're still, even if you rewatch it, that still hits heavy. That still hits hard, even if you know the twist.
When you first watched it, knowing the twist, did some of that stuff take away for you for the first time?
No, because I thought with how the film was paced and how it was shot that it was just someone wrote it wrong. I actually, for most of the film, thought the Reddit was lying. I thought I was completely trolled until the moment came and was like, shit, I did know it.
What was like your reaction as soon as the twist came? Like, oh shit, they weren't fucking kidding.
Yeah, I couldn't jump out of the seat. But I was just like, holy shit, it was right. No. Now, I thought there was like a second twist coming. I was waiting for that extra twist where like Tony turns around and all of a sudden the Trevor has the gun in his hand and says, I'm also known as an actor or something like that. I was waiting for like an extra twist until it kept going and going. I'm like, holy shit, it was real.
Yeah. When I first saw that twist, like I was having second thoughts. Like, is this even real? Is this really happening? I know. I'm on that. I'm still grasping the idea that this is not real. Like maybe he goes evil in the end. Like, oops, another double twist. Like.
Yeah, I was like, as a fan of the comic book, I was inevitably thinking of that as well. I was thinking, oh, please let there be another fucking twist. I can't, like, all the months leading up to this, thinking, oh shit, we're gonna get the 10 rings, we're gonna get the McLuhan crystals from the comics, basically the alien ship that gave the Mandarin his rings. I was like, oh please, let there be a twist that there's something grand and bigger here. And like I mentioned earlier, I was very conflicted at first. I was sort of thinking, fuck, how could they miss that opportunity? You had everything there. You had the Chitauri invasion. You could have explained the rings as a Chitauri weapon, but they didn't. What a wasted opportunity. And it's just such a hard pill to swallow,
Yeah.
especially when Guy Pearce's character Alder Skillion flat out says, "I am the Mandarin." I was kind of like,
Yeah.
is he? I mean, he has a dragon tattoo, which I guess makes him sort of, oh shit, he's an Asian-inspired villain because he has a dragon tattoo. But I mean, he's a white guy that breathes fire. Do we really want that to be the Mandarin? But I mean, then again, the good for me outweighs the bad. But if I had to pinpoint more of the bad, more of the stuff that I didn't like the fact that they removed Tony's heart thing, the
Arc
shrapnel.
reactor. Yeah.
Yeah, he basically just sort of hand waved it. Thematically it makes sense for Tony to finally move on from this bane in his heart, literally a literal bane in his heart. It was great for him to finally move, but I hate they just hand waved it through surgery. Like, oh shit, could have had that removed since the first Iron Man movie via surgery. Like, really? That's what you're
I
doing?
think he's holding back, right?
Yeah, it's like,
But
why didn't you guys do that?
aren't there scenes that were cut out because they were only available in China that actually explain that sequence?
Because back in 2013, I was already up doing this fucking MCU news thing. I
Mm.
was studying news. I was like analyzing news from back from 2011. I was already doing this shit. When during the months leading up to Iron Man 3, they announced that they got a Chinese actor. I forgot his name. I forgot what movie he came out with. And everyone thought, the entire fandom thought, this Chinese actor was playing Radioactive Man, who in the comics
Oh yeah.
The Chinese character named Chen Lu. Basically, he's a guy he's made out of fucking radioactive goo, and everyone literally thought that he was gonna be Radioactive Man. Like, holy shit! And you see that scene in the trailer where it's the scene in the Chinese theater where after the guy lets the theater explode. In the trailer, you see like someone's foot, like sort of barefoot walking, and like
Oh
everything was.
yeah, yeah.
People thought that was the Chinese actor. And lo and behold, he was just some Chinese actor they got for the Chinese market, and they sent me explained his role by, oh, he was the guy who removed the shrapnel, but for the most part it was kind of like it didn't really have any much significance. But again, another thing I didn't like was the fact that they gave Pepper the extremis
Oh yeah.
serum, and
Hmm.
they removed it
Yeah.
like 10 minutes later. I kind of did see the point of them making Pepper a superhero for a moment. I wish they just gave her armor. I mean, it's pretty cool to see Pepper kick some ass, but it's like, really? Pepper has fucking powers now. What's next? Fucking Aunt May's gonna get bitten by a spider too in another Spider-Man film where she gets powers and stuff, and they remove it 10 minutes later. Like it was a crazy idea I wasn't fond of. And another thing I didn't like was we found out years later that Rebecca Hall was supposed to be the actual villain and not Guy
Yeah.
Pearce. I kind of
Yeah.
wish I kind of wish they stuck through that because it would have been great to see a female villain as early as Phase Two. And I saw an interview. I saw a quote from Rebecca Hall recently. I think it was from the direct from one of the news sites out there,
Yeah.
basically
Yeah.
saying that she was supposed to be sort of like a semi-redeemed villain by the end, where she sort of, I guess, sacrifices her life once she realizes the bad she's been doing. I mean, we got the hint of that in Iron Man 3 when she sort of decides to help Tony as
Hmm.
he side. But I would have loved to see like a full-on female villain as early as Iron Man
Yeah.
3.
Well, that was the Ike Perlmutter era where he just kind of intervened. What I think it was back then when they wanted to do a Black Widow film as well, but he said, "Oh, girls don't sell toys or don't buy enough toys for these characters." Which
Yeah,
it's that's the interesting thing about Marvel Studios to me is that they have such an interesting history as a pretty much a small independent country company that only country company that only exists for what 12 or 13 years in what it's doing right now,
Hmm.
and
yeah.
they went through so many things. A creative like group that was controlling a lot of the films, which I find ironic that nowadays everyone complains that every Marvel movie is the same when there was literally an era where they had no choice.
Yeah.
And then everyone says they take no risks, and then Iron Man 3 takes one iconic probably the iconic Iron Man villain next to Fing Fang Foom and completely changes them, but they don't take risks. And I love how Iron Man 3 just positions itself in like that turning of an age. Because there are also a lot of scenes that I think like I kind of believe that Hall's character was supposed to be in Gwyneth Paltrow's shoes at the end of the film. Like that was the redeeming arc. It wasn't supposed to be Pepper getting the powers.
Oh shit.
And I because that
Well,
would make somehow sense to the sense of the story because it feels like they had to shoehorn it in some way for the main plot or main storyline to still remain relevant as it was planned. And I agree. The ending, the I am Mandarin sequence is a little on the nose for the whole. I think the whole point of that was just to be anyone can be it. That was the point of it all. I created
Mm,
the character. In the end, I could be the character because I created him. Which
mm.
I know a lot of people aren't the biggest fans of like retroactively changing aspects of things or kind of twisting, but I love how they use the short film to just go, oh yeah, there's a real Mandarin and he's pissed.
Uh,
So that,
actually, on the contrary, I actually hate that they had to sort of quote unquote apologize for that twist with that short film. I
uh,
mean, it's a fucking amazing short film. It's well
mhm.
made. It's well
The one
produced. It's
shot.
by
Yeah.
Yeah, it's by the same guy who did the script, Iron Man 3 script.
True.
I just that they had to appease the fans after the outrage over the twist. In retrospect, it sort of plants the seed. Oh, there's another Mandarin out there, which obviously we're gonna get.
that,
Hopefully soon, as soon as the coronavirus stuff ends, they could resume filming. But I just kind of that sort of soured me on the idea. I wish they stuck to their guns and said, no, this is the
mm,
twist we did. We're not fucking apologizing for it. We're glad Shane Black did what he did, and fuck you. Um, Also talking about Shane Black, I just fucking realized now that Iron Man 3 might be the closest MCU film to have on auteur as a director, where they let the director
Mm.
truly
Have
take
that
control.
creative freedom.
Yeah, to have his creative freedom to put his signature, spin on it. I mean, all Shane Black films, quote unquote, take place in Christmas. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
true to that spirit, Iron Man 3 does take place during the winter. Stuff like that. They gave Shane Black carte blanche to do whatever the fuck he wanted, and it was the closest thing to for the MCU to have an auteur as a director. Which in many ways, I think their experiences with Shane Black sort of turned them off potentially to their experience with Edgar Wright. I'm pretty. I wouldn't be surprised if their experience with this sort of helped them change their minds
Mm.
on on Edgar Wright when when it came to finally doing Ant Man. Like
Yeah.
they probably thought, oh shit, we can't have another Mandarin situation where it's just its own thing. We gotta rein Edgar Wright in if he's not willing to, to play by our rules, and we have to kick him out. I mean, unfortunately, as much as I love Iron Man 3, it's also unfortunate that it's the last quote unquote auteur MCU film and probably maybe forever.
I would agree if it wasn't for Thor 3 for Ragnarok.
Mm,
I feel like that is another point where it shifts back towards, because right now I get the feeling with like Black Widow with the tone and what they're doing with the Eternals that they're trying to give their more creative inputs, but at the same time I have to agree the story behind Doctor Strange kind of turns it back. The thing is where I think what is challenging for a company like Marvel Studios is that they're in a position where they can't really they have a universe. Everyone wants this universe to be one thing. Even if people complain, people still, even if they drift too far, people will complain about it. If they stay within the universe, people will complain about it. If they're not true to the comics, people will complain about it. If they're not giving any creative freedom, people will complain about it. If they give too much creative freedom, people will complain about it. They're in like the worst position. There's no winning in the end, and you have to respect what, like, even DC. I respect what both companies have done. DC had a rough patch, but they're really trying to go into a new direction. And I think it's amazing that even with how I'll say online discussions around these films are, how these films kind of pillow back into what they are, how they are, and still try to keep those elements of what makes them unique, I'll say.
You guys covered it all.
I'd also like to add just some funny thing when as a fan anticipating all this cool shit back in 2013. Everyone also thought that there was gonna be a Guardians um, post credit scene in Iron Man 3
Oh
because
yeah.
the
Oh yeah.
the movie coincided with the then new Iron Man appearance in Guardians of the Galaxy comic when Iron Man finally flew to
Mm.
space to to hang out with the Guardians. That was one of the first instances of Iron Man going to space, and you know leading up to the movie, Marvel put out like these promotional arts for the new suits, the Heartbreaker suit. He had a suit named
Great,
Igor,
yeah.
which everyone thought that was the Hulkbuster, which
Oh yeah.
it was not.
Oh
But
yeah.
it was such a nice touch to how fans reacted to stuff like this back in the day.
Were you disappointed that in the post credit scene that Bruce Banner is there, or is it just
Yeah,
okay?
it honestly was kind of like a disappointment to get a joke post credit scene. I mean, I think that's the only sort of joke post credit scene we have where we didn't get anything story wise after it. It was just literally,
This
you know,
Spider-Man Homecoming though. It's
oh yeah.
the Iron Man Captain America going, patience. Sometimes
Oh yeah.
waiting can free.
Oh my god, I hate that.
What was the
It's
Thor
brilliant.
Thor post credit scene?
Thor,
The
first one.
Dark World.
Thor: The Dark World, the Reality Stone being brought to the Collector.
You see, so that's at least seeding what's next. Um,
Yeah.
One last thing I want to add for Iron Man 3 before we move on to Thor. I absolutely love how they introduced the idea of Tony having a million suits.
Yeah.
Like we saw,
Iron Legion.
yeah, the Iron Legion is basically seeing the Iron Legion. What is the name of the protocol? House Party?
Oh,
What's it called? House
Spider
Party?
Protocol. Yeah.
Yeah, the House Party protocol, and just the scene where, you know, things are getting dark, and they don't have anything to fight against, Mandarin's, Guy Pearce's army, and then fucking 100 suits come flying to Tony Stark, and I like how Rhodey's like, "Give me one," and Tony's like, "They're not coded to you. Bye," and he just leaves Rhodey to just fucking fight by himself. That's pretty fucking hilarious.
I also love how the Iron Legion, like up until that point, he always just updated one suit. And then it made sense that it was his own paranoia that made him just create 1,000 different suits. That's a
Yeah.
great character reasoning for that to be a thing.
It also showed like how high tech the suits were getting. For the most
Yeah.
part, the suit, the Avengers armor, the one that flew to him when he was fighting Loki. In retrospect, looking at where his tech was in Endgame, that shit was clunky as fuck. It's not at all sleek or anything. It was like as big. It probably weighed like 1,000 pounds. But come Endgame, like the suits come out of his like shades or something. It's so crazy.
Yeah, and the prodigal son, Mark 42. It's an entertaining suit in the movie. Before we move
Yeah.
on to Thor: Dark World, I'm gonna read some thoughts from our listeners, from our followers over at Twitter, because I posted a survey last week about what's your opinion about Iron Man 3. Give us your thoughts. So I'm gonna read like 3 to 4 comments here. I'm just gonna read someone from at Timbalay90. He said that it's underappreciated. It's not the greatest, but it's fun and not even that dumb. Someone clearly put some thought into Tony's development, action, music, and color. There's flaws, yes, but it's promoter's fault. Most hated it gets is for Mandarin twist, but the OG wouldn't work. So okay. Next one is from at Loki Q. He says, "I like it, but I just wish they were brave enough to introduce the Mandarin with his magical powers." And we have two more tweets here that stands out. Here from the Beard 27. This movie was solid. And it was a nice follow up to the Avengers. Was more about Tony's development than anything else, but was necessary. Had some good fun in it, and I'd love to see Extremis and Justin Hammer mix it up for a future MCU film. Last but not least, from Megan Ruiz at This Is Malarkey 2. She says she liked it and thought it brought Tony back to some of his roots as a literal genius and inventor. Dealt with real
Yes.
consequences after traumatic events, and I like seeing more of James Rhodes. Right. Yeah, there's more James Rhodes in that movie. So we've talked about Iron Man 3. Now let's move on to the next movie. Thor: The Dark World. Thor: The Dark World's the first film that introduces an Infinity Stone. I mean, second film, the Reality Stone. And then we see Jane's first trip to Asgard. So I'm gonna start with you, Joe. When you first saw the movie, initial thoughts.
I had fun. So the Thor films are, ironically, my stepfather hates going to the movies, but we somehow managed to get him to watch Thor, and he's been hooked on the franchise since. And Thor 2, we went as a family, and he loved it. He had a ball with the film, and I did too. The thing is, I wouldn't call it like Marvel's most daring picture, but it's a fun film. For me, what really sells it is the dynamic between Thor and Loki. Those two on screen is just a really fun thing. And I have to say that Ragnarok plays on it much better than this film did. But it was still a fun time, and I like it alone. The them stuck in the spaceship was quite a funny Loki trying to tell him, oh, how you fly it. He's arrogantly doing whatever he wants. But the biggest drawback is the rather forced chemistry between Thor and Jane Foster, because it's an interesting concept. I like that they try to bring a human to Asgard rather than Thor always coming to Earth. But by the climax, them I just doing that in the end either way, I thought was a bit of a waste. It's a very fast-paced film. It feels like it just goes by really fast for me personally. But I still think it's a fun time, and I still am up until this point, I'll say there's not an MCU film that is really bad.
Yeah.
I think at worst they're just okay or fun, which is still better than most franchises can say after 23, 24 films.
Charles, your initial thoughts upon seeing the movie?
Well, for me, the thing that sort of turns me off to Thor more than any other MCU film, I guess, for me, it feels toneless. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have an identity of its own. It's not like, Captain America is a period piece. Captain America 2 is a thriller.
Mm-hmm.
Iron Man 3 is a body comedy, part political thriller as well. There's no tone to it. And
Yeah.
I think, and among all those Phase 2 films, it's sort of the only one that doesn't have a tone. I mean, at least Ant-Man is a heist movie. The Avengers is sort of like the big blockbuster spectacle, so I'm willing to give it a pass because it has so many characters from different kinds of tones, so it just kind of exists as a team up. But yeah, that's the thing that sort of makes Thor to almost boring to me. I mean, compared to the
Mm-hmm.
Incredible Hulk, where you had Tim Roth, you got Thunderbolt Ross, and you got a bunch of cool scenes. But for Thor, it's kind of like it just falls flat to me. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so crazy because Malekith in the comics is such a badass character, especially during the recent Jason Aaron run. Like Malekith just
Oh yeah.
shot up as like one of the big five Thor villains. And when you watch Thor: The Dark World, Malekith just does nothing. He just leaps for like 30% of the movie and just like orders his henchmen to fight Thor. And even from a design standpoint, I can't understand why they went with the direction they did, especially when you look at the art of Thor: The Dark World. If you look at the designs they had for Malekith, like all the designs look pretty spot on compared to the related to the actual source material. Every design looked exactly like the comic book. So I don't understand why they went with this departure for the character. Again, like Joe said, the chemistry between Jane and Thor didn't work. I hate
Yeah.
how like their first interaction is Jane slapping him in the face. I get they were
Oh my
trying to
god.
do like a slapstick kind of moment, but it didn't work at all. It's also super ridiculous that Jane becomes the host of the ether.
Yeah.
It's like that's some fucking bullshit. Similar to what they did with Pepper getting powers. It's like, really? Does it have to be Jane? Can it be just like someone else? Like, you really have to make the world smaller by giving Jane this set of Infinity Stone powers, and I guess it's just their way to sort of keep Jane in the story, keep the story moving, but it just didn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also didn't like the fact that I kind of hate that they sort of undercut Loki's death with the reveal at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Because I
Yeah.
mean that Loki scene when he dies, that was pretty fucking good. Those are one of the movie's better scenes. But again, like it's just so tonally flat. Like 5 minutes after Loki dies, there's a gag with Thor and the cell phone. So it's just so out of place. And it's so weird because we love how funny Thor Ragnarok is, but when I imagine how funny, or rather when I think about the comedy in the Dark World, it's just so bad. It's like probably one
Mm-hmm.
of the worst in the MC. And it's so weird because everyone was so excited when they announced Alan Taylor was directing the movie, especially he was coming off Game of Thrones, and Game of Thrones was on its way to be the biggest thing ever. So people thought, oh shit, this is gonna be like the Game of Thrones, and we're gonna get like practical sets. We're gonna get awesome production design. We're gonna get the Game of Thrones family drama, and that shit was just nowhere to be found in the movie. And again, I think
Mm-hmm.
all the bad shit can be attributed to the Marvel Creative Committee. The team that was answering to Mike Perlmutter. I have a hunch that all the bad stuff was because of them.
Yeah.
So again, like Joe said, it's not too shabby of a movie considering we have like 20 plus films in a franchise. There's never been a truly garbage Marvel movie yet, but it's still disappointing to see Thor struggle even if in its second installment.
For me, okay, Thor Dark World for me is like this. If MCU is a TV series, Iron Man is a pilot episode, Avengers Endgame is the season finale, series finale, and Thor: Dark World is the filler episode. that,
Mm, yeah.
that's how that's how I think of it. I hate the villain. Sorry, I hate Malekith. Yes, I hate also the chemistry of Thor and Jane in that film, and I hope they fix that in Thor: Love and Thunder. I don't know how, but maybe I trust Taika. Um, there's some jokes that are offbeat, the phone that you mentioned, Charles. Damn,
Yeah,
I
the
hate
guy.
that. Yeah, and but the one thing that I like, I still like some of the parts. Like one thing that I like about that movie is the escape of Loki in the prison. That whole sequence. I
Mhm.
love that.
Mm,
While they're narrating the plan, like the warriors three are helping him, and all of them are saying, if you betray him, I will kill you. Like all of them literally saying that. That was a fun bit. That was a fun bit. But after that, um, but I love the post credit scene. Those are the two aspects that I love. Semi introducing the world of the Guardians of the Galaxy. I know James Gunn directed that scene, not the
mm,
Thor Dark World director, which makes sense because, damn. So I really hate that movie. Like
really?
when I'm in the cinema first viewing, I was like, that's it, right? Okay,
Mm,
yeah,
Yeah.
like that's the only MCU movie that I always watch MCU movies twice in cinemas, at least twice. I watched
same,
Endgame
yeah.
9 times. I watched Endgame 9 times. I watched Infinity War 6 times. Um, but that movie is the only MCU movie I didn't watch for the second time. I only watched it
Mm,
through my Infinity War and Endgame marathon.
Dude, I watched the Dark World twice in one day.
Oh my god,
really?
that's torture, man.
Because I earlier that day I was at it was 2013, so I was at an internship, and my dad was like, "Oh, the Thor movie's out. Want to watch? Okay." I watched with my dad, and then as soon as our viewing ended, I got a text from my bandmate saying, "Hey, I have two free tickets to the premiere of Thor, like the red carpet quote unquote premiere here in the city. Do you want to watch?" I'm like, "All right, might as well see it twice." And those are
Okay.
the only times I've seen The Dark World from start to finish. I haven't seen the movie from start to finish in maybe in 7 years. I haven't seen it since then. I've
Uh
seen
oh.
clips
Mm,
when I do the supercuts. I sort of go through them. I sort of skim through them, but I haven't sat down and actually watched it for 7 years. And I think it's a testament to how sort of unnecessary it is. Um,
yeah.
Talking about the scenes that that sort of stand out there. I mean, the funeral scene absolutely gorgeous to look at. All of those the when everyone did the lantern thing during Frigga's funeral was absolutely beautiful. I sort of like the idea of the third act fight with Malekith, where they're just sort of teleporting throughout different dimensions. They're fighting,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna admit that the scene where they're sliding off the building, and
That
Thor's
was funny.
face just like sort of like wipes through the window, and everyone just sees it. That was that was pretty fucking hilarious. And I
What
like
is
the
it with
bit where
Thor films and glass? Every
yeah,
film, his face gets shoved into some glass and we see the other side.
it's like a recurring bit. I also like the during that big fight where they're all teleporting to different dimensions, how Mjolnir is just shooting through space and Earth at the same time. Like
Yeah.
Thor throws Mjolnir, and then they teleport to another realm, and you see fucking Mjolnir shoot up the sky trying to follow Thor wherever he went, and then Thor shoots back to Earth, and then Mjolnir just follows back. That was a very subtle bit about the power of Mjolnir that I don't think a lot of fans picked up on when it first came out. I thought that was pretty cool. I
Mm,
like what's like I sort of like the curse transformation. I like how he sort of stabs himself, right? Curse stabs himself with a whatever that thing is, right? That's how he
uh,
becomes cursed.
nice, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like the idea of him transforming into a brute. That scene where Loki dies is actually pretty well shot, and
Mhm.
I like how Loki actually tries to save Jane from death. And at one point, he almost gets close to getting stuck into that, that grenade black hole thing. That's a
Yeah.
pretty cool moment. But yeah, I guess those are the things I like with the movie. It's more of scenes rather than actual, character moments. But
Mhm.
for the most part, it's a dud for me.
But the thing is, like, there are really creative concepts. Like the black hole grenades alone is such a inventive idea that we saw in video games but never like put into film, which I sadly think has never been really used again or saw any recurrence. Like the thing is for me is what I think really sinks the film in the end is that Malekith as a villain just falls flat. They have a great actor to play him. Yeah, he doesn't look anything like like the comics, which is sad because he was a very unique villain among
Ah,
Marvel's repertoire. The thing is, I like the general concept of the Dark Elves, how they look, and it's just they kind of got stuck with okay, this is how they look, so Malekith has to look like that too, and that's what I find rather disappointing. Um, and for me, always a big thing is I don't like about superhero films is they always kind of end up killing off the villain. And I
yeah.
thought it would have been like you get a tease of half of his face being corrupted through the reality stone, and if they kind of left him alive, he would be just insane, a completely different character, closer to what he was in the comics, just through what they were doing in the end. But the thing is, it's kind of this okay, we get more comic accurate at the end of the film because they over explain why half of his face has a different color, which a lot of films tend to
Yeah.
like to do is like there's some elements where like okay, we have to explain why this is this or no one will get it, and most comic fans will go, I never questioned it when I was a kid, why would I question it now?
Yeah. Well, talking about the design of the dark elves and how Malekith how they wanted Malekith to look the same. Interestingly enough, during the Jason Aaron I was talking about earlier, where Malekith becomes again the big bad, all the dark elves look like exactly their MCU counterpart. They started adapting the look of the dark elves similar. You know how they had sort of flat, stoic masks that are in many ways faceless. That's their route. That's the route that they went for Malekith's
Mhm.
dark elves. But they in the comics they still stuck with the blue purple Malekith face. So in many ways I'm still hoping that we get sort of a redemption for Malekith,
Mm.
especially I forgot the name of the actor, but
Christopher
yeah,
Eccleston.
yeah, Christopher
Yeah.
Eccleston. I love him in The Leftovers. He was one of my favorite parts of that show, and he's an amazing actor. He was part of he was Doctor Who, right? He was part of the
Yep.
family of Doctor Who, right? So he was there. He has a history with playing geek centric characters. I would love to have him back. I'm hoping they somehow redeem him, not the way they redeemed Ronan in Captain Marvel, of course. I want him to be redeemed in a good way. I'm hoping
Mm.
they find a way to bring him back, you know, in his true comic book accurate form.
What I feel like the MCU still is kind of missing outside of Loki is a long running villain, like
Yeah.
characters that can pop up, and because like most of them don't show, if they are still alive they don't show up for another 5 or 6 years, but they don't really like they show up or and then they're killed off at worst. I'm still pissed off that Crossbones is dead because I loved his design in Civil War. And the thing is, it's like Malekith is such an interesting character because this is the thing for me. What I think Thor really lacked is from all the characters, Thor kind of doesn't necessarily need the Avengers films. He doesn't lead into the Avengers film outside of the Reality Stone, and that's why I think where they got stuck. Because what I always wanted from a Thor film was to just explore the mythology, the nine realms, do something with this setup that everyone kind of knows or hears stories about, and just do it in the MCU. And the sad thing is that the first film kind of had the challenge of bringing the Shakespearean God of Thunder, making him believable in a world where we have Iron Man, Captain America, which I think the film did quite well. But the problem is that it got to a stalemate where it says, okay, this is your personality. Thor is on Earth. He's a little goofy. And everyone, and he has about 1,000 extra characters that are all around him explaining things to him. I mean, let's be honest. Do we really need the interns or the intern of the intern in Thor: The Dark World? It was a necessary element.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty weird. I actually forgot that Darcy was in this. Darcy's in this movie. I forgot that aspect. Yeah, there's something about the first two Thor films jokes that are pretty bad. You know, like the first Thor film, I hate when in the third act where Thor gets his hammer back. I hate that Jane's first words are like, "Oh my god." It's like, oh
Yeah.
god. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Seriously? That's the joke you're going for? I mean, I get it, but goddamn, dude, that's a fucking whack joke.
Yeah.
You know what, for me, the best joke in all of Thor is, though? It's the fact that Kenneth Branagh, a Shakespearean director and actor, was the director of the first one, and he
Yeah,
saw a character that was known as the White, and then turned him into an African American actor with Idris Elba as Heimdall.
yeah.
Because in the mythology, he's called the White, and I love that irony that he just throws in there.
Oh, so Heimdall is called the White in the Norse mythology.
Yeah, he has a very odd title. The
That's
White
interesting.
God is his name.
Oh,
That's
interesting.
interesting.
Okay. Let's talk about something behind the scenes, guys. So we've known that after Dark World, even Chris Hemsworth complained like he was frustrated and bored while doing it. Imagine
Mm.
that. Also, there's this recent news that came out several days ago that Patty Jenkins was supposed to direct that movie, the director of Wonder Woman, and she recently revealed in an interview that she can't do it. Like it's hard for her to do the movie because she believes that the script isn't right. And what do you think, guys? Do you think Thor: Dark World would be a much better movie with her helming the directing chair?
No, I think I saw the interview. Um, Patty Jenkins did the absolutely right call for for Thor because like what the fuck is she gonna do to make the film any better? Like the script's pretty
Mm.
bad. They were under sort of the purview of Ike Perlmutter. She probably couldn't be able to do shit because everything was so set in stone. I kind of feel bad for Alan Taylor though, the director, because even he had complaints with his experience working on that movie. It doesn't
Yeah.
seem like it was a fun experience because I think a lot of executives try to meddle with it. I think that's where the Ike Perlmutter problem comes in. But yeah, it's like you know, it's so funny because the director just shifted twice. Michelle McLaren was originally supposed to do it, and she did a bunch of episodes of that. And then Patty Jenkins was on to do it, and then that didn't happen. So you know, the film had a very rough production history to start. So
Mm.
maybe it maybe it was problematic from the get go. So there wasn't much people could make it any better. So that was that.
I don't think it would have changed anything as well. I think that, like, yeah, I agree. The film has a lot of like studio meddling elements in it. It's sadly, to a certain degree, very obvious, and I feel bad for the director Alan Taylor because I think he's extremely talented in what he does. But like most of the films he did had the same issue because he did Terminator Genesis as well, that seemed to have
Yeah,
suffered from very similar issues. I think Patty Jenkins, she would have left her mark. I think she's a director who, no matter what, would still kind of leave her visual aspect. But the thing is, like with a franchise like Thor, she's a good director who I think really knew how to take Wonder Woman and leave her mark on it because she started the franchise. The problem was is that whoever went into Thor: The Dark World, it could only go two ways. Either they have to stick to what originally worked or do something completely different. And we saw that with Iron Man 2, that even Jon Favreau was kind of stuck in where he had to go. But
yeah,
Captain America was lucky enough that the second film was completely different from the first because we had a time skip for the character. And it's I find it ironic that in most films for Marvel, the third one of the originals that started it is always the one that really goes out there and does something completely unique. It's sad. I kind of wish that Patty Jenkins directed a film though for Marvel as well. I have to say that I think she could really bring us a very interesting character. But we're on an interesting path, and right now I think Marvel is really dipping their toes in many different unique directors with their own visions, which I hope to see with Black Widow whenever it comes out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whenever that comes out and wherever it comes out.
Okay, one last thing I want to add before we end. We're about to end. I'm gonna say one last nice thing about Thor: The Dark World.
Mm.
Endgame made Thor: The Dark World a much better film
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
because of
Seeing
to
it in a different
that.
angle.
Yeah, because of Endgame's one of Endgame's best moments, Thor seeing his mom before she dies. It's one of like the best fucking things in Endgame, and in retrospect, it sort of makes Thor: The Dark World a more significant film lore wise. So I'm gonna give Thor: The Dark World that.
Before we go, I just want to read some of our comments. I posted a tweet, last minute tweet, and I just want to give their thoughts on Thor: Dark World. And here, okay, we have a tweet here coming from at Benji200. Worst MCU film by a long stretch. Yikes. Um, Another tweet here coming from Robin Blade D. It may not be a masterpiece, but I love it. Great visuals, great dynamic between Thor and Loki, like all the MCU movies. It's entertaining. I love all the MCUs. I'm not real objective, so yeah, he loves everything in the MCU. So who knows? Another one is from Listen to Black Woman. It's the worst movie in the MCU. Yeah, flat out. And so many people replying with here, like like that. Like it's not okay. It's not good. It's not great. It's yeah. All right,
See,
that's
Mm.
a fun little discussion. Now gonna go to the verdict. Okay, so uh, what is the worst film out of the two that we discussed? Iron Man 3 or Thor: Dark World? I'll start with you, Joe.
Thor: The Dark World. I really don't think Iron Man 3 is a bad film or even close to just being mediocre. I think it's a very subversive film, but it does a lot right, and it has moments that stick out, but I think it's a really good film. I don't think it's really a good comparison, let's say.
Charles, your verdict?
I saw a tweet the other day that said, all you fucking salty fans, all you fucking salty Iron Man 3 haters hate the film because it outsmarted you, and I absolutely agree with
Mm.
that statement. People hate it for the twist. For them it ruins an entire movie, but for me it's just one facet of the movie. The good outweighs the bad, and Iron Man 3 has an identity. Thor: The Dark World does not. So just on that alone, Iron Man 3 takes the cake for me.
Mm.
So you're saying Thor: Dark World is the worst one, right?
Yeah, the
Okay.
worst, maybe the worst in the MCU. But again, it's
All
not
right.
worst garbage, but it's just worse that it's just the least good of all the movies.
That's
Least
the irony
enjoyable.
of talking about them. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the weird thing about talking about Marvel films because when you're comparing, you always say worst or best, but in the end, if you throw in another comparison, let's talk about The Room or something like that that is really known to be a bad film. Your own enjoyment of even bad films or something influences, but even Marvel, it hasn't had the lows that some people accredit it to it. I think it had mediocre films, but it's not. We're not talking about like really terribly done films, unwatchable or something like that.
All right. Verdict. For me, yeah, I agree with you guys. Thor: Dark World, like I said earlier, it's just right there. Like bottom of the barrel, like bottom of the list. If you rank MCU movies, is right there at the bottom. And Thor: Dark World is the worst among the two. And there you have it, folks. We discussed, we decided, we broke it down, and Thor: Dark World is our pick as the MCU worst MCU film ever. No, I don't know. And thank you guys for breaking it down. Before we go, I just want to read some of our comments. I posted a tweet, last minute tweet, and I just want to give their thoughts on Thor: Dark World. And here, okay, we have a tweet here coming from at Benji200. Worst MCU film by a long stretch. Yikes. Um, Another tweet here coming from Robin Blade D. It may not be a masterpiece, but I love it. Great visuals, great dynamic between Thor and Loki, like all the MCU movies. It's entertaining. I love all the MCUs. I'm not real objective, so yeah, he loves everything the MCU. So who knows? Another one is from Listen to Black Woman. It's the worst movie in the MCU. Yeah, flat out. And so many people replying with here, like like that. Like it's not okay. It's not good. It's not great. It's yeah. So there you have it. Thank you for tuning in to the MC Exchange podcast. Before we go, please do follow us on Twitter so you can give your comments and be featured in the show. That's twitter.com/MCUExchange. And you can also follow us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/TheMCUExchange. You can listen to all of our episodes over at Spotify, at YouTube, and Anchor, at Google Podcasts, at Breaker. Just search the MCU Exchange podcast. You can follow me on Twitter. My Twitter is twitter.com/AaronChino. That's AeronChino. You can also follow Joe.
I'm at that Abel, ThatAberl.
You can also follow Charles.
You could find me on Twitter at CFSVillianMava.
And you can also go to our website, www.mcuexchange.com. And this has been the three of us. And hope you guys are keeping safe. And stay safe out there. And see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.